and whether or not we live in an inclusive community. Some of the questions we hope to answer are, where are we now? Where are we going? And where do we want to be as a community? I want to mention that if you're listening at home and want to participate in tonight's forum, you can email us a question to kofo@kofo.com, and your question or comment may be presented tonight on our program. So again, we thank you for being with us this evening. This program is going to be a kind of a two-part initiative. The first part will include some members of the community who are going to address us here this evening and talk a little bit about their thoughts with respect to inclusiveness in Ottawa, and maybe just some stories about inclusiveness here in Ottawa and Franklin County. The second will involve a 5-person panel made up of community members representing different walks of life within our community, and we will engage them as we explore how inclusive our community is and what we can do to make it more inclusive. A full introduction of our panelists will come in just a moment. Right now, let's begin that first phase of our program. And the first person we're going to welcome to the microphone this evening is the pastor of the First Christian Church here in Ottawa, Craig Robinson, who is with us today. He's going to step up to the microphone, and we appreciate his presence here this evening.
Thank you for having me. I represent a perspective called Christianity, but it's my Christianity. I'm not speaking for my church. I'm not speaking for all Christians. I'm speaking from my perspective. What I would like to share with some of us is a story of a black preacher who was here at a black church in Ottawa, and he told me this story in Walmart, and it caught me off guard. He told me that he was having a Bible study, and there were some white kids who showed up who were harassing them. And the first thing that went through his mind was, here we go, South Carolina all over again. So he talked to them and got to know them and tried to, they tried to come back at him, tried to antagonize him. He wasn't going to be antagonized. But he told me that he didn't make friends, he didn't let them take him off, and so they left the church. But he also told me this. In his backpack, he had a gun. He was afraid something might happen. But nothing happened. But he said, I had a gun because we were not going to be South Carolina again. That told me that there is still room for us to grow as a Christian. As Christians, there's always room for us to grow. Jesus is inclusive, in my opinion. Jesus broke down walls, Ephesians 2:11 through 22. Go check it out. But the bottom line is this. All are invited to my table, or our table at First Christian. That's how we view it. It is inclusive. Everybody is invited. That's why I love this room. We have many different perspectives. All of us are inclusive. Let us continue to grow that way. Thank you.
Okay, pastor of the First Christian Church, Craig Robinson, thank you very much for your comments here this evening. And I believe Ottawa City Manager Richard Neinstead had a few things that he wanted to say before we get underway tonight as well. Richard, thank you very much for being a part of this.
Well, thank you, Brad. And I want to thank all of the panelists for being a part of this. And COFO accepting that challenge when we talked to you about broadcasting this. And I want to thank Ottawa University. Dr. Reggies didn't bat an eye when we said, hey, could we use those facilities? And that is part of OU's legacy in this community. Discrimination. In the last week, we helped a couple of young ladies in a group put together a Black Lives Matter peaceful demonstration. So one of the things that Chief Weingartner and I did was, and Commissioner Kaler did a couple of different times, was walk up and down the street and just and with the young ladies and had them explain what the purpose was. And I am struck by the question I heard that said, do we really have demonstration or discrimination in our community? And my response was, it is, but I want you to understand something. We are all white here, and it is not something that we experience, but you better believe, based upon my 40 years of managing, that people of color experience. It's overt, and it can be covert too. So what that tells me is that we still have a lot of work done. I'm hoping that this is one of a number of dialogues we have in the coming years, coming months with the public on inclusion, discrimination, because in the end, it is about equity, equality, and justice for everyone, but especially for people of color who don't always get that chance in our country or community.
Ottawa City Manager Richard Nienstedt, thank you very much for your comments here this evening. Anybody else in the audience, would you like to address our panel or speak to our listeners on the air here this evening before we get underway? I too would like to thank Dr. Regis for allowing us the use of this facility tonight. We've got a nice spread of drink and food over there to nourish our bodies this evening, so we really appreciate that, and that's probably going to end up being my supper tonight, so I appreciate that very much. Well, we are ready to introduce our panel here this evening. First up, we have Richard Jackson. Mr. Jackson was born and raised through the court system in Rochester, New York. He attended Ottawa University and graduated in 1968. He has a master's degree in administration from the University of Utah. He worked for Governors Robert Docking and Bob Bennett, serving as the liaison between state and federal poverty programs. He served 4 years as mayor of Ottawa. Jackson was also the president of the Kansas League of Municipalities and received the Outstanding Local Elected Official Award from the league. He retired from ECAN after working for 47 years, 43 of those as the chief executive officer. His motto has been standing up for what is right. And he has coordinated the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration for the last 25 years. Mr. Jackson, thank you for your presence here with us this evening.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Ottawa USD 290 Superintendent Dr. Ryan Cobbs. Dr. Cobbs is an Ottawa High graduate who has worked for USD 290 for the past 19 years and was appointed to the position of superintendent in 2018. Dr. Cobbs is a graduate of Ottawa University as well with a degree in mathematics. He has his master's and doctoral degrees in school leadership from Emporia State University and the University of Kansas, respectively. Dr. Cobbs sits on the Ottawa Police Foundation Board, the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce Board, the Franklin County Development Council Executive Board, and the Community Corrections Advisory Board. Dr. Cobbs, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Taya Hickman. Ms. Hickman is a senior here at Ottawa University who will graduate in December with a bachelor's degree in business administration. She's always had a passion for diversity and inclusion. She started her work at Blue Valley West High School by co-founding their first Black student union and continued her passion being president of the BSU at Ottawa University for 2 years, and is also the inaugural Kansas City winner of the 2017 Princeton Prize in Race Relations, and believes that we can create change through education and celebration. Ms. Hickman, thank you for being here with us tonight. Our fourth panelist is Ottawa Mayor Pro Tem Sarah Kaler. Mrs. Kaler was born and raised in Ottawa. After college, she and her husband moved back to Ottawa to raise a family. Since 2011, Kaler has served on the Ottawa City Commission. In those 9 years, she has served as the mayor for 3 terms. She currently serves as the mayor pro tem for the city of Ottawa and serves in a leadership role with the League of Kansas Municipalities as vice president and also as the chairperson for the Republicans of Franklin County. She has been involved with Court-Appointed Special Advocate, or CASA, in the 4th Judicial District in Kansas, which serves Franklin and other area counties. And she's also been involved with Girl Scouts, helping to inspire leadership among females. In conjunction with her service to the community, you'll find her cheering on her daughters at an OHS volleyball or an Ottawa Otters swim meet. Please welcome Sarah Kaler.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Ottawa Police Chief Adam Weingartner. Weingartner is originally from Greenfield Center, New York. He was appointed to the position of police chief in June of last year. And after 24 years of service with the department, Chief Weingartner is a graduate of the 262nd session of the FBI National Academy and the 2009 Kansas Police Administrators Seminar. He holds an Associates of Applied Science degree in Criminal Justice from the State University of New York in Canton, a certificate in Leadership Studies from Fort Hays State University, and a bachelor's degree in Criminal Justice from the Central Christian College of Kansas. Professional associations include the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the FBI National Academy Associates, Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police, and the Kansas Peace Officers Association. We want to welcome Police Chief Adam Weingartner. And there is our panel for this evening. Again, if you have a comment, a question, or a story that you would like to share with us this evening, you can email those to us at kofo@kofo.com. I might also mention that if you are out of the range of the signal of KOFO, either on 103.7 FM or 1220 AM, we are also live streaming this from our website at kofo.com. There's a section of our website up toward the top of the page in the top third called the Hot Links section, and you can click on that and be able to listen in on our conversation tonight as well. With that, I think we're ready to get underway this evening. Our first question tonight, and I think we'll start with Mr. Jackson. If you were to give Ottawa and Franklin County a letter grade with respect to inclusion, what would that letter grade be, and explain how you arrived at that grade?
I'd say a C+, and I arrived at that from my experience of having living in this community 50 plus years, and have had an opportunity to talk to people who've had concerns about being discriminated against. And also when I look at some of the activities that are provided through this community, the lack of participation, and I might say lack of participation on both sides.
Dr. Cobbs.
I would probably go with the C area, and I think we're average in comparison to communities similar to us. Certainly there are areas for great improvement, but I think it's in a community that is not highly diverse. I think it's more difficult for people to recognize when they're not being inclusive. Subsequently, we have a great deal of work to do that I think we can certainly accomplish.
Ms. Hickman.
I would give the grade of a B-. As a student, I have not had any horrible experiences. I've always felt welcome at the school, but I know that there are others who have had more challenges than I have. So there's always room for improvement in the community aspect and in the school.
All right. And Mayor Pro Tem Kaler.
You know, I want to give two different grades. I want to give a grade from when I was in school, and Dr. Cobbs and I were in school, and I want to give a grade of now, because I do think we've gotten better. I think when I was in school, what I understood of inclusion was completely different than what I understand it as now. And so I really believe that we have probably, I don't know that we've gone up a complete letter grade, but we've certainly raised our percentage points. And I would still, I agree with the rest of the panelists. We have so much work to be done. However, if individuals want to be a part of our community, I do believe that they will find a place to be a part of our community. I think it takes both parties the community as a whole and individuals to step up too. So I hesitate to give a particular grade because I hate grades. And yeah, Pastor Robinson says pass, fail, and I do think we're passing. Let's say that. I think we're passing. I think we're a whole lot better than we were a couple decades ago.
Chief Weingartner.
Well, I'll add just a little bit of humor from a personal experience. Has nothing to do with this, but I am the proud parent of a 2020 graduate from Ottawa High School, and during a certain challenge in one of his classes, he asked me two things because he was struggling. First, D's get degrees. Sorry, Dr. Reggies, but they do. And the grade you need to get in some classes is not an F. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We don't want to be an F. We don't want to be anywhere close to that. And I'm going to almost take the same approach that Sarah did, and from when I started and from where I am now, because my outlook is a little bit different as the chief and the people that I get the opportunity to interact with that some of my officers in particular don't. So as a community, and I can say this based on some recent experiences from walking around with Richard downtown and interacting, we're average at best. And that's about a C. And I was a little bit disappointed in some of the things that were said, some of the things I heard and read online, in particular to the event that was being planned for. And I know it's a lot easier for people to remain anonymous and say things online that they may not otherwise in person. And that tells me we do have some work to do. Now, for my position as the police chief, I get the opportunity to be sitting on this panel tonight with some great people that I've known for a long time, and one in particular that I just met the other night. And if we can compile this group like this in this community, and we can all work to address the issues and show improvement, then that grade is going to get elevated very quickly, especially as this topic really has filtered to the top of all of our conversations. So I'm hopeful that that will be in the B category. I don't think we'll ever all be in an A, because we all individually have our own biases. Now, those may not be racial biases, they may not be ethnical biases, but they're biases nonetheless. As long as we don't let those biases influence our decisions and impact what we do is the important part. I don't like Diet Coke or diet drinks at all. I have a bias for diet drinks, but I don't let it affect my son, who's a type 1 diabetic and has to drink diet drinks. I don't look at that any differently. I just look at it as he has to do that in his own way, and I have to do it in my own way, and that's okay.
All right, we're ready for our second question here this evening, which kind of plays off the first question. We asked about where we stand as a community right now in terms of inclusion. How do we go about improving that grade? And I think on this particular instance, we'll start with Police Chief Weingartner and work our way back the other way down the panel.
Well, thank you. I think tonight is one of several steps we've taken recently. That's a great start to make some improvements, and just allowing safe, constructive, productive conversations to be aired and open, whether that's in the park downtown like we did last Friday, now online, now on the radio, and certainly all of the conversations that I believe are probably taking place in many workplaces and hopefully in every living room in this community. And that's where it's going to begin, is in the home, and talking about what your experiences are and what you can do to make sure that other people don't suffer from some of the bias that I mentioned earlier. We all have a lot of work to do to make every other person feel respected, and I feel humbled to get the opportunity to take place in some of this, and it makes me definitely reflect personally on some of the things that I'm not proud of that I've done in life, and I think that every single one of us can agree that we've said something or done something that we reflect back on and just wish we heck wouldn't have done that. And that is what I do every single day, not to repeat those same mistakes from my past, and try to make myself and therefore all the people around me better for the future.
Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Kaler.
You know, some individuals that hear me speak tonight may have already heard me have this conversation about one of my very favorite books, which is The 4 Agreements. And I actually carry the card with me that lists the 4 agreements, and it's really something, it's kind of a roadmap for me, and so I keep it, and I actually brought it out and just set it right here next to me tonight. And I think that we can start by actually following some of these agreements. And the first one is to be impeccable with your word. Don't say anything you don't mean. Don't spread hate with your words. Don't take anything personal. I don't know, Brad, what your story is. I don't know what Dr. Wanika's story is. I don't know everyone's story, but I can certainly ask, and if those individuals that I ask are willing to share their stories, I understand better. Don't make assumptions is the 3rd agreement, and I can't assume that because I'm looking at you, Brad, that I know, like I said, your story. I don't. And the more we know, the better we'll be. The last one is to always do your best. I don't think the City of Ottawa always does their best. I certainly think we try to do our best. And what my best is, or what your best is today, is not your best tomorrow. So every single day, it's a different best. And so I think we can build inclusion by really following those agreements.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hickman, what can we do to go about improving inclusion within our community?
So I think there are 3 things we can do to help improve inclusion. So the first thing is to stop with the generalizations. So right now in the news, we see that there's a generalization towards Black men in particular, that they are dangerous, even though they're not. And the other generalization we see is that all cops are bad. And we know that that is also not the case. So stopping those generalizations is really important. The second thing is to have difficult conversations. So racial topics or topics about diversity and inclusion do tend to make people uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. So I think we need to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable in order to improve relations between people who are different than you. So the third thing is to stop saying, I don't see color. Because if you don't see color, then you don't see me and I don't see you. And we have to be able to see each other in order to address what's happening in the world and to really improve the dynamics between different religions and races. So those would be the 3 things I think would highly improve inclusion.
Dr. Cobbs.
Certainly agree with the 3 panelists prior to me. As an educator, I got into education because I believed that education is the gateway for change. It's certainly the catalyst for true equality. This is the one thing that we can provide to everybody that gives them some equal footing as they start their lives. However, as I've spent as much time in the profession as I have, I recognize that that's not the case. And that there are differences in terms of what people have access to and the accomplishments they're able to make within our system, certainly in the public school system, that impact that for different ethnicities, different cultures, different genders. If you look at the data, and we can talk about the Kansas State Department of Education data, the graduation rate of students of color is dramatically less than the graduation rate of white students. That correlation in and of itself would indicate that there's an issue within the system that we need to address. How we begin to address that is certainly the action steps that we have to begin to take to be a more inclusive school system and begin to recognize what culturally relevant teaching means. Make sure that we can understand the differences between the groups that come into our systems and understand the different values that they place on education, and make sure that we leave no students. The vision statement of our system of USD 290 is that all students graduate with the knowledge, skills, and behaviors to hold life-sustaining employment. We're not close to that. And there are a lot of things that we have to do as we become efficacious in each individual student, ensuring that they reach the goal and we help them get to the end. As we start talking about those things, the need to ensure that we are inclusive and that we have removed biases not only starts with making sure our instructors know how to teach effectively in that manner, but that we also take a look at a system that was built around middle-class white folks and begin to change it. If the education system as it sits, specifically schools, public schools, were built around a middle-class white system, that this is the way education was provided, and that is a barrier that we have to break through. The resources that we purchase are typically built towards that same bias, and subsequently, if we want to break through that, we've got to make sure that we're evaluating those resources and removing those biases before they ever get to our students. Those are some steps that we can do right now and have a huge impact upon our systems to begin to make a more inclusive environment. The other part, if we really want to create, if you look at the data, there's a huge amount of data that says that students of color perform better when there are people like them in their classrooms. Yet in our community, we have very few instructors of any color other than white, which makes it incumbent upon us to do some diligence in recruiting to make sure that we do what's best for our students, knowing that the data supports them by having people similar to them in their classrooms and leading those classes. So those are some things that I think that we can do at USD 290 to begin to break down some of those barriers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jackson.
Well, listening to the discussion and some of the things that have been said, I think it boils down to what commitment are we willing to make personally to make improvements in our community. A lot of what's been said has been said before. It's nothing new, and so why haven't we progressed? Why haven't we moved forward? Mr. Cobbs mentioned some statistics and things. You can get all sorts of statistics you want. I look at some of the opportunities that we currently have available in the community that people don't take advantage of. We have the WE conference here at Ottawa University, combination with the city and ECAN and Ottawa University. We've been doing for what, 5 years, 6 years? I see the police department's always there, the fire department's always there, the city's always there. I don't see other entities that show up. And certainly they work with people that are impacted by those things that we discuss at those conferences. I look at the Martin Luther King Essay Contest program we've done for 20 plus years, and the numbers are going down, they're not going up. In some school districts it's going up. It's an opportunity to learn about the civil rights movement, Dr. King, and all those things that we talk about, not only African American. Too long ago, women didn't have the right to vote with the women's suffrage. So there's things out there and there's activities out there that are helpful, and we ought to be participating in, and we ought to be encouraging others to participate in. But to me, if we continue to have this dialogue and we don't make any commitments and we don't make any movement, we're going to be right here again next year. Now, I was happy to see during the Black Lives Matter, which was on the June 13th. We probably broaden that. I'm sure that a lot of people still don't know what June 13th is. You can have a June 13th day at school. One of our school districts, I think West Franklin, one of the things that they did was they brought a school in from the inner city. They spent a day there at Pomona, dialoguing and getting to know each other, and vice versa. And these are some of the things we need to do. Get out and talk to other people. Find out that they're really, look at the good things in people. Accept those things that they have to offer. Diversity is not a weakness, it's a strength in this community. I've often talked about the 11 o'clock hour being the most segregated hour in the community. Very few churches. At your church, when our church burnt down, offered space. Now we're going to some of the other churches because it had burned down. Part of them, the only relationship between Bethany Chapel and others had been First Baptist. Now, we profess we go to church every Sunday. We say we love each other. But where's the fellowship? Where's the opportunity to get to learn other people and learn from them?
All right, thank you very much for your response. Again, I'll remind people that if they would like to participate in this conversation from home, we are accepting comments, questions, or stories that you might like to share via email, kofo@kofo.com. We are monitoring that, and we can pass those along when those come in. On this next question, I'm going to handle it a little differently. I think in this particular instance, I'm going to state the question, and then whoever has a response to that, raise your hand. I will acknowledge you, and we'll just kind of take it in order. If you've got a response, fine. If not, that's okay too. But the question I want to know is, do you see things going on in the community, and I think Richard actually mentioned a couple of them there, that are going on that do promote inclusiveness? And if so, can you maybe talk about that a little bit? Anybody want to go first on that one? Sarah, why don't you, ladies first.
Thank you. Actually, I want to share a story about when I was in high school, and I went to Ottawa High School, and I was an active member of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, so FCA. And once a month, that group would go to a different church. So everybody from FCA would show up. I don't even know that we told the churches ahead of time they were going. I'm hoping we did, but that was my teenage brain at that point. We would go to a different church every single month. And I don't remember what, second Sunday or whatever. And it fundamentally changed the way that I looked at this community, because every single church looks so different. And we were always welcomed in different manners, but it was just a great opportunity to see the way individuals worshiped, the way they fellowship, the way they spend time together. And I think that it was a great step forward for many people of my generation, or at least that were a part of that club, to see how our city looked different. So one thing that we did a few years ago.
All right, Chief Weingartner.
Thanks, Brad. Certainly this event, the one last Friday for the Black Lives Matter rally downtown, the conversations leading up to that do promote inclusion conversations. The WE conference that Richard Jackson mentioned, and if you missed that this year, man, did you miss a really good one. I've been to, they're all good, but the speaker that OU had here last year was tremendous, and there were some motivated people walking out the door from that, and I hope that continues. From a recruiting aspect for the police departments, we promote inclusion, but we have to recruit based on our demographics. Dr. Cobbs highlighted this. Our demographics are over 92% white. So that means if you have a workforce representative of that, there's all but a handful of people of different backgrounds that may or may not be employed. And that is the case for this department. Right now, we have one Hispanic female officer. We had a black male officer up until just a few months ago, but unfortunately he left for another community where his spouse works. They wanted to live somewhere else where they can start to raise a family. But we promote that, but we don't do it good enough. And I don't want to minimize what I believe the importance of being an accredited law enforcement agency is, but I also don't want to talk about it like it's window dressing and just say, well, CALEA says you got to recruit people representative of the community, so we do that. What we have to do is look beyond that and talk about the feelings of people that we as law enforcement officers are doing enforcement contacts on, or other types of contacts in their background. And you really don't get that from just recruiting people of different backgrounds. So we're doing some good baby steps for the inclusive side of it, but I think for me personally, and Richard talked about, commit to something, and I'm committed to try to do a better job and dig deeper into that so that when we do get people here, maybe it's a little bit deeper commitment to having other backgrounds here somehow, some way. I don't have that figured out yet. I'm not exactly sure how to work that because I haven't had it happen yet, but we got to do something a little bit better and different.
It's 6:33, 27 minutes away from 7 o'clock on the KOFO 1220 and 103.7 FM. You're listening to an Ottawa Dialogue on Inclusion live from the Hasty Room in the Ottawa University Student Union. And we just asked the question a moment ago, what are we doing within our community to be inclusive? Are there some positive stories of some things that are going on out there? And we've had a couple of great responses. Do we have any more responses from the panel? Mr. Jackson.
Just follow up on what the chief said. That I think the police department's doing an outstanding job in terms of recruiting. That's something that they've worked on for many, many years. And I know when I was on the commission, one of the problems that we had is that we would bring in officers and we would train them, and they'd go to Olathe or someplace else. I think when you're trying to be create a diversified workforce, whether it's the university or the school district or the police department, whatever, is, people like to move where there's people like them. So I look at magazines, we use the chamber as an example. They put out promotional things, you look at there, I don't see anybody there that looks like me, and I said, well, why would anybody move to this community? There isn't anybody here that looks like me. And I also know that the wages, they can go elsewhere and make a lot more money. I know with Dr. Cobbs has been involved in doing some things in terms of job training with businesses and so forth. And we teach the life skills, why it's important to show up on time. But what about how did you get along with one another? How do you get along with somebody that speaks a different language than you, somebody that looks different than you, and maybe has a different set of values? And to me, that's just as important as showing up on time, because if you can't get along with your person that you're working with, you aren't going to be successful. And I think some of that really needs to start at an earlier age. The earlier, the better.
I got a question for you, Richard. You stayed here for a heck of a long time. How come you stayed in Ottawa so long, coming from Rochester, New York?
How come?
Yeah.
Well, in spite of, I guess, all the ills and things that you find in the community, I kind of like Ottawa. And, when I graduated, I had some offers, and I had an offer to go to Waterloo, Iowa, to work at a school there that about 60% of the school there parents were single-family parents. But there was no way, I had to make a decision in a week. There was no way that I could do that. So I ended up staying here and ended up at ECAN and ended up doing some other things and got more involved in the community. But I think in spite of the problems, and I don't know if Ottawa is any different than most communities. Now, I come from Rochester, New York, big city, so maybe I notice things a little bit more because of the size of the community, but that doesn't mean that the problems doesn't exist. And I found that there's people that are willing to work and try to make a difference in the community. We were one of the first, I believe the first in the state, that had a diversity policy that the city came up with, and the policy for personnel. We had the Buffalo Soldiers out at the high school and the elementary schools came one year, and you've heard about the movie. I think it was the 26th Cavalry that fought in, and actually that was the Buffalo Soldiers from Hayes, Kansas. So there's a lot of things that have gone in, but I guess it's like I said before, is what commitment are you willing to make? I live here. You try to do the best you can and working with people to make the community better.
Well, I just want to say thank you for making the decision to stay here for all these years and live here in your retirement, and I think your contributions to this community have been immeasurable. So I think we're very lucky to have held you for the time that we have had. Anybody else want to tackle this question? Dr. Cobbs.
And I'm a high school math teacher at heart, right? And I loved high school kids and thought high school was kind of the be-all, end-all of the world, and never understood the power of elementary until I became a district administrator and got to spend some time in elementaries. The epitome of inclusivity happens in preschool and kindergarten. Those kids have no idea the differences between one another. We have kids that come to us that are non-English speakers. It doesn't matter to them. As long as they can play and have a good time, they find a way to communicate with one another. They find a way. It is powerful to walk into a kindergarten classroom and watch how those kids interact with one another. We have the opportunity. Our youth is a powerful group, and the thing that I love to watch about all of this is to see the youth that is involved with creating a movement. The power of youth is right here in front of us. Our kids at Ottawa High School, Ottawa Middle School, and even in our elementary schools have found a way to lead cultural shifts. We've seen an LGBT community go from kind of being not in the open to being open and being accepted and not only being accepted, but being homecoming kings and queens and being, they're just incredible opportunities and examples of our youth leading the way and being inclusive and changing a community. And that's the power of what happens with our kids as they grow up and they can identify with one another and recognize that they really have the power to create something different in our community. That's where I think we're really going to see the change. And I look forward to seeing what our kids throughout USD 290 and the accompanying districts, whether it be Wellsville, West Franklin, Central Heights, they're all in our area, and certainly coupled with Ottawa University in Neosho County. The catalyst for change exists right here, and the power of our young people is incredible and certainly fun to watch.
Very good. Ms. Hickman, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yes, I think one of the most powerful events that involved inclusion was definitely the Black Lives Matter rally last week. I had never been to a rally before, so when I was asked to speak at it, I was kind of like, what, me? Like, okay. But I just thought it was awesome seeing my friends who don't even live in Ottawa there, seeing people from the school there, administrators, teachers, coaches, and people I never met before. I go to Bethany Chapel while I'm in school, so seeing them there was also awesome too. So to have all that support and just have so many people from so many places that may not even live in the city, basically just come together and be like, hey, you know what, I got your back. Let's figure out how we can make this better. I thought it was awesome. And one of the signs I saw on there that I thought was really powerful said, I might not understand, but I still stand with you. So I think that's kind of the mindset we all have to take into account, because like it was said earlier, we don't know everybody's story and we don't know everybody's experience, but that's okay. That's why it's good to ask questions and try to understand so that you can stand with them. And that day I felt like a lot of people were standing for and with people who look like me, so I'll never forget that.
Thank you very much. We've got another question I want to ask here this evening. It seems like anymore when you turn on the television, you can't turn the news on or have a program not interrupted by a report of some atrocity that's taking place somewhere in the community against people of color. What can we do as a community here in Ottawa, in Franklin County, to ensure that these things that happen in other communities don't happen here? Ms. Hickman.
I think a major thing that needs to happen is we have to stop sugarcoating things. The news can be scary, it can be overwhelming, but kind of like how I said earlier, we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and having those difficult conversations about what's really happening. For people that look like me, African Americans, I can understand how it feels to see things happen to people who look like me and be scared or get nervous or overwhelmed. And that's real. And there are a lot of different opinions and aspects and feelings towards what we see on the news. And it's important that we have those conversations and not blur some details or sugarcoat, because how are we going to get to the core of what the problem is if we can't even get comfortable with talking about it in the first place? So I think that that's going to be a major part in how we not only process the news, but how we gather that information and then take it into the workplace or into the school. We just have to stop sugarcoating and just face it head on. That's the only way we're going to move forward.
All right. Anybody else want to tackle that one? Richard Jackson.
I agree with what you said. The other part of that is hold people accountable. Some of the things that you've seen on the TV lately, that things are happening. You look at the history of that individual, particularly the one, George Floyd, police officer, 18 reprimands. I don't know of any place, any of us are working, you get 18 reprimands and still have a job. So I think part of it is holding people accountable. As I said the other night, this little selfish, this has changed the world. This has changed the world. Remember Rodney King was seen on TV, exact same thing. The other thing is when you're working with people, you can't get caught up in the moment. Somebody has to be level-headed. and think about what you're saying. We had a city employee here a number of years ago who made a dumb statement regarding the Rodney King thing, that if he had an invisible baton, they never would have seen him. I mean, those are things that you don't make as a public official. Nobody makes it, period. So I think accountability is a big part. I said, standing up for what is right. It's difficult, but you got to do it. And if we're not willing to stand up for what is right, how are we going to teach our young people to stand up for what is right? And that's what I saw in the march Friday. When I looked out and you saw all those youth, and you look at what's going on in the country and you see all the marches, you see more and more youth. As I said before, this country, whether we move forward or not, rests with our young people and opportunities and what we provide to them to make them better leaders, better citizens in our communities.
Mayor Pro Tem Kaler, I know you raised your hand.
Yeah, today I was looking at, like, I just actually Googled if change was easy. And change isn't easy, and that's the thing. If we could change, I really believe we would have changed. But, and I pulled up just a funny little meme that said that if change was easy, we'd all be thin and rich. Probably would be. But it's not, and it's really uncomfortable. But I want to tell a quick little story about how the Black Lives Movement, at least when I came into it and when I came a part of it, my daughter, who is at the high school, and I were driving separate cars, and we'd stopped to get gas because parents buy the gas, and kids don't, and that's how it works. And my daughter says to me, "Hey Mom, Natalie called me and she's gonna be calling you here in a minute, and they're gonna put together this Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matter protest or an experience," and she kind of didn't know what to call it. She said, "But you know, I told her you would help her and you guys could get it all figured out in a few minutes." And I'm sure that my face probably blew her back, and I was just like, gee, okay, I don't know that we'll be able to do that in a few minutes, but I'm glad she's gonna call me. And she did call me. And these girls, these ladies, these young women really felt empowered. And I was so proud to be a part of that, but really we need to empower more people to make change. We need to empower more people to step out of their box, to be uncomfortable. Make change is really uncomfortable, and we all have to feel uncomfortable to get to a spot in which that real change happens. And that happened with Natalie and with that phone call like 3 weeks ago, and my daughter thinking, who's 17, that this could all just be put together in a 3-minute conversation. Little did she know. But she felt empowered, and they all felt empowered, so we need to empower others.
That was a great evening. I attended that, and I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad to see the turnout that was there. I'm glad to see that it was peaceful, and it got me to thinking about a lot of things. I did a lot of self-reflection after that, so it started some things within me as well, and I think that was a great event. Anybody else? Police Chief Adam Weingartner.
So a lot of these conversations of why we're here tonight are the direct results of a law enforcement use of deadly force. And that is a decision that no officer wants to make. And if they do make it, they must live with that for the rest of their lives. And so do many other people that are impacted. So it starts with trust. Trust in law enforcement. Trust takes a long time to establish, but it can disappear in a moment and sometimes never comes back, and certainly may not come back to the degree that you had it before. Some of the ethos of law enforcement are trust, dedication, and commitment, protect and serve, and we truly believe that to our core. None of us would put this uniform on every single day and go out to lay our lives in front of somebody else without hesitation if we didn't believe that. I leave home every night knowing I may not make it back. And I never want that to happen. So how do we prevent some of the things from happening in other communities to happen here? Specific to a deadly use of police force, is you have to trust us. You have to trust us that despite the outcome or what the initial reaction may be, that we're going to provide an accurate account of the events. And we do that through policy, we do that through procedure, we do that through training. We can't second guess officers making a split-second decision, but we can review those decisions and improve things where they can be improved. What we cannot do is destroy this community. And I wish other communities would not destroy themselves. The event is tragic enough. Burning buildings, damaging property, hurting innocent people only takes away from the message and adds to the pain. And we can't do that. We didn't have that happen here with our rally. We heard some of those concerns, some of those misconceptions, a lot of those rumors, but it didn't happen here. And in fact, I know from some of the speakers that spoke there, they were blown away by what they saw. That had nothing to do with the police department. We were there to make sure some people walking in the street could walk in the street safe, and that was it. It had everything to do with each individual person's approach to that situation that night. If in the event, when another deadly use of force occurs in this community, we approach it the same way, despite the outcomes, we will be able to not suffer some of those problems that other communities are doing. And I know that is the biggest ask I can make of people who feel like they are never listened to, never heard, and never believed. We still have work to do to add to that trust value with our community. And the conversations, these tough conversations we have, are part of that process.
Thank you, Chief Weingartner. Ottawa USD 290 School Superintendent, Dr. Ryan Cobbs.
Brian, I think there's true power in listening, and listening without bias, and removing your own moral compass or belief systems to truly hear what people are saying. And I think when we do so, when we open our minds and our hearts to really, I heard that there was a sign that said, I may not understand, but I stand with you. I think when we can at least begin to recognize what the issues are, and things that don't impact us all in the same way, but really listen and really begin to explore what those things mean to other people and how we can begin to impact them for the better, we have a greater opportunity to really do something great and really make a change for inclusivity. I also think that it's important to recognize that we shouldn't create the push for change and the push for inclusion based upon media blitzes. Media blitzes come and go, and there will be the next thing down the road. When we recognize that there is something truly within our culture that needs to be addressed, we need to continue to address it and not think that just because the media has quit covering it that we fixed it. That we continue to go until we've actually addressed the situation at hand and we can begin to see improvements, and then we push harder to get to the goal. But those are two things that I think that we can really do to begin to impact our community in a positive way.
Thank you very much. We've only got about a little more actually than 5 minutes left to go on the program. And I think we'll go through the panel one by one. Again, we'll start with Mr. Richard Jackson here and just give some closing comments on what's next in this step, perhaps just whatever you feel, whatever's in your heart. Spend about a minute on that if you could, and we'll try to wrap things up here this evening.
Well, if you come in the north part of town, you'll see a sign there that says, "Welcome to Ottawa, building an inclusive community." I think maybe this is the start tonight with this panel, and towards that direction. I think we need to continue this dialogue with some other players, some other units of government, some other citizens in the community to get a feel for what they see and ideas that they might have for improving the community. One thing I might suggest to the city, maybe to the chief, one thing that's done before is to have we used to set aside one evening a week when we'd have pizza and invite somebody in to talk to the mayor. Be an idea to talk to the police chief, find out from citizens what their concerns are, because you only see or know what you see and what you're told. And I found in the past there's people out there that have a lot of concerns and things, and I don't think people are necessarily blinded by what they see in the media. The media is reporting what they see, and this is a buildup of frustration over years, and then I think those are the time to deal with it. So I think anytime we can have a dialogue in this community is good.
Dr. Cobbs.
I think Richard stated earlier that having dialogue is very important. I think what he challenged us all with was what is our course for action? And if there was one thing that I could leave here with, I think it's that the first step is dialogue, the next step is action, and that's the piece that we have to get to, is what are the steps that we're going to take to truly make a difference, not just sit here amongst the panel and talk about it. What are we going to do to benefit our community and ensure that we have an inclusive environment, not just talk about it?
Tia Hickman.
I definitely agree with them. Dialogue is super important, and again, just emphasizing the importance of not sugarcoating and having those uncomfortable conversations. I can't say that enough. And also to just be proud of who you are, where you come from, no matter what your background is, and be willing and open to celebrating others, even if they're different than you. And that's what's really going to bring everybody together. My mom always told me different does not mean deficient, and I shared that last week in my speech, and I really believe in that. So give people a chance, do some self-reflection, ask questions, and just be the best version of yourself and choose what side of history you want to be a part of, and just, make an impact in your own special way.
Mayor Pro Tem Sarah Kaler.
My mother's experience in this community was different than my experience in this community. And the experience that my daughters are having in this community is different than my experience. They're not good, they're not bad. I'm not judging one experience over another, but they're all different. The real key issue is that we've got to continue to move forward. And I do see us trying to do that. I don't think we're trying to hold ourselves back as a community. I do think we're trying to move forward. I think it's important that we ask more questions. We need to ask questions and my daughters would probably tell you they're tired of questions, but I ask more questions than they ever want to answer so that I can completely understand where they're coming from. I think we need to listen more. There is a nationwide, it's not a huge movement, but there's a small movement of a concept called participatory budgeting, in which the cities allocate a small amount, and maybe it's a huge amount of money to a community project that is yet to be determined, in which the community drives. I would like to see us try something like that here in our community. Not anybody at this table decide what needs to happen. Talk to our citizens and they decide what happens. They drive the factors. It's my daughters that drive the factors. It's your daughters and sons that drive the factors, and they're the ones that make the difference. I'm unwilling to wait another generation for major change to happen. And I talked about at the beginning that my mom's experience was different than my experience and is my daughter's experience. I'm unwilling to wait another generation to see major change happen. So it's everybody's responsibility. And I think that we can help, but I also think that there's so many more voices out there that can help move the mark.
We only got about 30 seconds, Adam, if you can wrap it up in that time. I hate to put you in the box,
I
brother.
can. Build trust, be transparent, listen with our ears and our heart, and do the best job every single day that we can for this community, make every single voice heard, and make sure we do that all the time.
Thank you very much, panelists, for your thoughts tonight and your contributions. I appreciate it. How about a nice round of applause for everybody from those here with us this evening? Have a great night. This has been our first dialogue on inclusion. Hopefully it's not our last. I'm Brad Howard, KOFO News.
Celebrating over 70 years of information, sports, and entertainment. We are hometown proud. KOFO, K279CS, Ottawa.
Here's the latest from ABC News. I'm Andy Field. Some people say not wearing a mask